The Paris Olympics opened up a few days ago, and there are several elements in the opening that were disturbing to some. And the culmination of that disturbance came with a representation of The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, in which was full of drag queens and, kind of LGBT icons. And in the middle of the scene, because it was the Last Supper, so obviously it's a meal, and then the meal gets opened up. So this plate comes up to the scene, and the meal gets opened up, and inside is a strange blue man wearing almost nothing, who starts to sing very sensuously and strangely, and then everybody in the scene of the Last Supper begins to kind of frolic very orgiastically, in a very disturbing manner, made even more disturbing by the fact that in the group was what seemed to be a prepubescent young girl who then gets taken by one of the men, in his arms, kind of in a dance move, as all these other people are starting to kind of frolic and caress each other and rub up against each other. And so the first thing we have to dispel is, this is actually one of the funniest things about this event, is all these people and a lot of Christians going online saying, it's actually not the Last Supper. It's the Feast of Dionysus. Why are all the Christians getting so annoyed? And why are the Christians getting so mad? I am educated. I understand that this is the Feast of Dionysus. It's like the capacity of people to easily accept gaslighting is hilarious. It's like, are we back in COVID once again? Is that what's going on? Or, I guess so. I guess it doesn't take much. People don't learn their lesson.
Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. My name is Andy Libson, and I'm joined by Kenny Cepeda. And as you can see, we've got a number of missing people here. Alex is, he's busy with some stuff. Eduardo's not here. He may show up. We might see him show up, but I'm kind of not thinking he's going to be here today. And so it's just going to be me and Kenny talking about the Olympics, the Paris Olympics. Although I do want to do a little promotional stuff. We are online at what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find the link to our blog in the episode notes. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, share your favorite episode, and jot down your information wherever you found this episode. All right. So, Kenny, we're talking about the Olympics. And I know that when we brought it up with Alex, he was not...
Should we say that, we were supposed to do part 2 of the Scramble for Africa?
Yes. Yes. That's coming. That's coming. But I'll just say that when I saw all this crazy, the Paris Olympics opening ceremony, now, mind you, I didn't see it. I just saw the controversy. In fact, I'm not watching any of the Olympics. Are you watching any of the Olympics?
I just watch highlights. I used to be really into the Olympics before, and I just, even from Tokyo, I didn't watch a single team from Tokyo because of the COVID bullshit, and and so I lost track of it. But
I'm not against watching it per se. I mean, I think at times I've been into it, but I just have other things to do. In fact, I guess I could have been watching yesterday, but I decided I wanted to drive Brandy to, she's had a freedom movie showing for like freedom movement kind of stuff. And I took her to that and decided to take a walk with Gizmo on a trail. So that was a much better use of my time.
So like you've been doing the exercise.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get back to this. So I contacted you and Alex and Eduardo and said, we got to talk about this Olympic opening ceremony and possibly the Olympics, because you brought up something that took place in a soccer match, which I'm perfectly willing to talk about. But obviously the controversy was this, the symbolism, these elements of symbolism within the Paris Olympics opening ceremony that were just both very dark, very religious, but then mixed religious with transgender LGBT stuff. Famously, in the one thing that people most talk about, although there's other symbolisms to talk about, where the Da Vinci's Last Supper is replicated, but with mostly people who are transgender or LGBT, and then also there's like but it's not just Da Vinci's Last Supper. It's also like this big metal plate, and you lift it up, and then there's this Dionysian character who's singing stuff, and everyone starts dancing and doing sexual stuff. And I think the message, from what I understand, that he's singing about, even though he's singing about it in a kind of like sexy voice, is about inclusion, which is supposedly what the theme of this thing was. The director, I can't remember what his name is, his last name is Jolly, basically said this was about inclusivity, and and some of the just things that have happened have been like, a bunch of videos on this have been taken down. Like, you can't even, like, I'm going to put some images up here, but you can't get video on this stuff. It's hard. So that's just, in and of itself, that is a story right there. And then the people from the Olympics came out and apologized. And then the director said he wished they hadn't apologized, and I guess what I wanted to share was like the sort of thoughts that I went through looking at that. First, do you want to say anything about yeah, go ahead, Kenny, sir.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, again, highlight that part that generally you are able to almost immediately watch, a good chunk of the Olympic ceremony online, like on YouTube. And even like the platforms that like NBC Sports, NBC that covers the Olympics, and this, I was looking before you even brought it up. I was trying to find it, and I found it strange that you would only find these like pictures and like clips no more than 2 minutes, and so yes, now in light of what happened, because I didn't know that was it was such a big controversy, because again, I wasn't paying attention entirely, but then when you brought it up and when I went online, it's very scary how they scrubbed all all YouTube, and pretty much, and what you can the most of the things that you can find is just commentary on it, right? And people discussing from different angles what transcurred. So that is very much indicative of the times we're living in, right? Where an event of such magnitude, because it is a massive world event, in the Olympic ceremony, it's actually a reason a lot of people watch this, right? It's a showcase of many things, and it's gone. It's nowhere to be found. Like, you have to work hard. And even though I've been trying to work hard at finding it, and it's still, it's very effective at censoring. That's the word. This event, and I've been able to piece together the ceremony through a bunch of clips, because people show different things, and that's the only way I've been able to see it. Not even through, again, NBC, like the platform that transmits the Olympics, they're not showing it. And so again, but I guess we'll get into this, like the ceremony right first, because I do have more questions about, like, what the Olympics is, and things like that, and what we think of it.
Yeah, I mean, and in some ways, I'm not sure what to make of this ceremony, the ceremony thing, other than it does disturb me. I think but I think in talking about it, I guess I want to go backwards to talk about the Olympics. And my understanding, at least the stated reason for the Olympics, is regardless of the state of the world, regardless of the fact that we have these conflicting nations, this is a place where nations are supposed to be able to come and peacefully compete, and even compete in a way that's not supposed to be lead to a bunch of deaths and destruction. Like it's actually supposed to be a symbol of global cooperation. I mean, that's the front of it. And let's be clear, if you're a Russian or Belarusian athlete, you're not allowed to be here. So strike one for inclusion. And of course, I also think at the very, like even as we talk about this and we talk about these Olympics going on, there are a whole like 12 US battleships are headed towards the Middle East in relationship to Israel going after Hezbollah, and preparing for a larger war. So at its core, the Olympics is a farce, and is a hypocrisy deeply built into it. And so I think this message of so first I'll say the first thing that came into my mind when I saw some of these images, and I recognized that these are curated images, because it wasn't just the Da Vinci scene, the Last Supper. There was also like a golden calf I had heard about that was being shown, like while people were singing. And then there was this initial pale horse, like this really pale horse, kind of like very spooky, metallic horse ridden by either a real rider or a metallic rider. It was all robotic, very spooky again, but religious. Like there was these things that I'm an atheist, and I know about pale horse. I know about golden calf. And then I'd heard that during the heavy metal band, people were playing with their heads chopped off. Like I get it, it's revolution. People get their heads chopped off there, and then there's just blood coming out because it's red. Kind of streamers coming out that were blood, and it's very disturbing when you think about some of the imagery. And I thought about what the first place I went to was what Jake had talked about, when he talked to us about his 2-part series on the New World Order, in a way that he looks at the world, which I don't fully share, but it affected me, because he's basically saying, look, the ruling class is a clique. They have their own religion. It is the opposite of any human religion. It would be described. He has another word for it, but it's basically Satanism. And they use satanic symbols to empower their operations. That's their belief. Whether I believe it or not, he's saying these folks believe in it, and this is what they use to empower themselves. And so I think he would say that it'd be important to put these symbols into play in front of people. And so I thought about that. Like I said, that's what this looks like to me. It looks like essentially the secret societies that I do believe exist within the capitalist class, kind of like promoting a kind of an inverted religious iconography for their own, to give power to their goals. And that still sticks in my mind as I think about like the themes that really come up here for me in the Olympics are not just hypocrisy and mockery, and gaslighting, but also, like you said, censorship is a theme now that comes up, and surveillance. Apparently, AI is being used for the first time, at least in France, to basically take all this motion capture, or the video cameras that are collecting stuff, to be able to screen through who are the possible dangers that are around there. And like everybody knows that all recent Olympics have been mass police state events, but now they're bringing AI directly into it, more directly. So I was just like, my family's become much more Christian. I know a lot of people who are Christian. I looked at this and was like, if this is inclusivity, then it seems to be an inclusivity that's excluding other people, like that's trying to like piss people off. Like, why would you do this in a way? Why wouldn't you try to do this in a bridge building way rather than in a fuck you, we're trans, we're LGBTQ, fuck you and your Christianity, go to hell. We're gonna take your iconography and we're gonna like fuck with it in front of you. That's inclusive? Like, that doesn't look inclusive to me. it looks like you're trying to stir up a fight, and that would be the least of it. I'm saying that that's still a different view even than what I've kind of thought about Jake might say, which is that view of like, it's just demonic crap that they're throwing at us to empower their religious way of looking at the world, but I even think that if you look at it just through the lens of a director, no, this director didn't act alone. They both come into play for me. The idea that there is a power symbols being brought up to power our rulers, and to put their things in play. And I also think it is meant to be exclusive. It is meant to be polarizing, and say this town isn't big enough for both of us. It's either your way or my way. And that to me just seems like the way the ruling class goes. So there was nothing about this that looked good. And I, as you know, Kenny, I've had differences with Jessica and people in the freedom movement who see the transgender movement as not even a movement. I do believe they are an oppressed group, but I believe their cause is being utilized to provoke division and to push not just for me, that's not so much the transhumanist agenda, but to basically divide people, push people in a corner, and then also allow the ruling class, using them to urinate on other people's important symbols and say, you can't touch us because we're doing it for inclusivity. And so the ruling class gets to hide behind this while they get the other sides to battle. And that's how I guess I'll just say that.
So I absolutely agree with you that it's deliberately provocative, to create division. This whole facade of inclusivity, they knew it was going to be provocative to the majority of people because, like, this worldview, right? Like the more we're queer, proud, and in your face. I don't think it's the dominant view. It's actually a minority, right? In that of like the more metropolitan places of the world, which do not represent again the majority of people that are watching, I would say. And so I understand this whole symbolism thing, and I think the people who executed this and who gave this thing a go, right? Because this has to be approved by different levels of power, because it is a portrayal, right, of a nation state. Like generally, like that's what China did, that's what Greece did, that's what Brazil did. They're trying to portray the best, right, like to the world, and and this was the complete opposite. This was provocative in a way that I've never witnessed in my life of seeing the Olympics. In you know, and it comes at a time where I think there is this growing view of the world, of the new world order, right? Of people seen through those lenses. I don't share that completely, right? Like I don't like I see this symbolism and stuff, and I do think there are organizations, right, and there are connections, and it's like gangs, right? They all have ways of symbolizing and showing pride. I don't think this is what that was, because these organizations try to stay secret, and there is a in I just blatantly think this was an act to provoke more division in the world, because that is what is going to be needed to rule in this epoch where the economy is faltering, the system is about to go into deep crisis. It is in crisis. They're trying to stave off something massive. War is looming, and so because like obviously they chose this the LGBTQ plus message to say fuck you, shove it down your throat, have it, eat it. Even if you don't like it, you're gonna see this, Um, and again, like that wasn't at all to project Paris, Paris, as a symbol of community and bringing people together. You know, when it comes to that, and they still knew, I think, on the more market side, right, the economics of it, that people were still gonna watch. It was still gonna make a shitload of money for a lot of people, while extracting a lot of money from the Parisians in the France in itself, because these events, they're money losing for like the state, you know, in terms of like the communities that it is supposed to elevate and help, like the cities themselves. They're not very profitable. You know, there was a lot of resistance from the people in France, from resistance to hosting this. You know, I actually saw that leading up to these Olympics, the number of cities trying to apply for, you know, to host the events has been reducing consistently, because they're an economic loss to the cities and countries that host them. You know, this is not unlike the World Cup. FIFA, the second biggest sporting event in the world. Same thing, you know. They make a lot of buildings. They're called white elephants, right? Because it's like when kings used to get white elephants, and then the community had to take care of it. So they make all this infrastructure that is useless, really, in long term, right? Like they might do some short term fixing of roads and this stuff, but in preparation to hosting events like this, they have to do a lot of head cracking. You know, this happened in Brazil in the favelas. You know, they had to go and accelerate. They did this in Paris, actually. I was seeing that they had to kick out a lot of migrants that were in Paris and transport them like 250 miles to essentially concentration camps. They're calling them some, you know, housing, but they're concentrating economically disadvantaged people that come from West Africa mostly, that were living in Paris. You know, funny enough, this also comes at a time where they're cracking heads in San Francisco, in a lot of cities, right? In California, they're taking homeless encampments and just without notice, just you know, cracking heads and moving them out, right? And this comes after a period where during COVID, like there were a lot of videos, right, specifically in San Francisco, and I would say like liberal cities, where people were shitting on homeless people, shitting on the economically disadvantaged. But now there's a flip. We're just cracking heads, and I think this is part of the same process that's going on. And so the Olympics in itself is a facade, right? Like, you said what it's supposed to mean, right? Like this ideal competitive event ruled by norms and protocols and respect, right? And where there is a level ground for everyone. It's just individual effort, right? Like that will get you through, and you represent your nation. But it's none of that, right? Like, and so I hope I'm making sense. But what I see in the ceremonies is a blatant, like, we don't give a fuck, you know, uh, it, to create that division that is gonna allow them to do what they're doing, like clearing encampments and going after the poor and going after the people who dissent, because that's ultimately what this whole inclusivity thing is about. It's been the tool, right? It's been the gateway to introduce other types of censorship, right? We can't, I saw a video on Jimmy Dore recently where they're mocking this influencer who's a teacher. I don't know if you saw that one, who's talking very condescendingly about how not to interrupt and how to elevate. This is language from like the liberal side, people of color, essentially Kamala Harris, in not question these people, right? And Jimmy Dore makes this comment that I think is spot on. What a way to infantilize people of color. You know, and so this is what this I see that this LGBTQ on your face stuff is ushering in. You know, the you are supposed to stay quiet and adhere to the new norms. You know, and if you dissent, you deserve to be censored. You deserve to not have a platform, because only the marginalized, regardless if they're wrong, regardless if they're vicious, regardless, you know, if they are capitalist tools, you know, you get a free pass, and right, and that reminds me of the colonizing process, right? Like how you educate or elevate, you really elevate a section of the community that you want to rule and oppress and beat down, right? You select a few and you grab, you put them on the raft, right? In the economic raft, you give them, because you also see people like Beyonce, like you know, who has a big platform. You see Snoop Dogg, for fuck's sake, like they're like you know, these black uh, people, right? Like representing America, for fuck's sake, like representing that, you know, this American dream, and but they're exceptional, you know, like they don't represent the masses of disadvantaged, beaten down, occupied black people in this country, right? But here is that facade of, you know, progress, inclusivity, greater values in, right, which we've been saying, at least I've been saying, that it's what's the facade that's coming undone, and so it's becoming more ridiculous to uphold, and so that's why I find this ceremony, you know, very like sinister, because they're saying fuck you, like we're gonna, because I even like I cringed when I saw that. I was like, fuck, you know, like anyone who knows me, I knows the work I've done in the, you know, LGBTQ plus community, like people, whatever the fuck. And so, but to go from that to say fuck you, fuck your religion, fuck, and we're gonna display it, you know, uh, to the world, and you're gonna take it, and fuck you if you get upset, fuck you, you know, you're just backwards, you know, that's just not that's not a recipe for unity of any sort. And I guess to kind of just jump off from there, the security aspect that we were saying, like um, AI, all this shit, they're even using AI to scan the athletes' bodies. I don't know if you know this one. For their bedding arrangements, right? These cardboard beds, this, you know, net zero, because the frame, I don't know if you know, but the
Mm-mm.
frame is made out of cardboard, because they're trying to diminish
Oh,
the carbon footprint of these Olympics.
hmm.
And so they made these carbon bases that a lot of the athletes were showing concern about leading up to it, with these three pieces of like high tech foam, you know, supposedly, that you can rearrange in different ways. And because the athletes' bodies are gonna be scanned by AI to give them the optimal arrangement of those three squares that make the mattress. Uh, you know, how crazy is this shit, right? Like they are scanning the top of the top, you know, like athletes of the world in order to help them, right? Like sleep better for their own good, in order to also uh, save the world, right? So overall, like this is a massive like liberal fuck you on your face, and you're gonna take it type of shit. And it's scary. It's scary. Sorry, I don't know. Maybe you want to comment on something.
No, no, no. I mean, I think because the one of the themes that's in that the director had talked about is revolution. France is the place of revolution. That was the reason for the heavy metal band, and you know, it was where it was located, and things like that. But if this is if this is revolutionary, this is revolution from above. This is the ruling class. This is their fourth industrial revolution vision. We are going to transform your world. Um, and people in the LGBTQ are being used as proxies. They are being shoved out in front, just like Ukraine as a proxy. We're going to use them to bludgeon our opponent. We get to hide behind this, the people who are essentially fighting the battle, and we get to hide what our cause is behind something that's called inclusive or diverse. But really, what we are is we are trying to transform society in a way to take it to a new level of inequality, to take humans into a new place of alienation, and workers into a deeper place of dispossession than they've already been in. Like the working class is exploited across the globe. That is going to deepen at a pace and at a level that requires a kind of revolution to occur. And I do believe that is, and I know while these societies are secret, I think they do want to make their symbolism not secret. Like I do think that's important to them as an indication of their success, as an indication of their power and of their ability to push their agenda. So this is where I do start to see it in the way that Jake would talk about it. I don't know what I haven't talked to Jake about this. I'm using him as a way of talking about this way of looking at the religious iconography of the ruling class, of the Western ruling class, because I think it would probably, in my opinion, it would be different in China. And so I do think that what we're seeing are in the same way that Ukraine is a proxy for an independence struggle, for a fight for self-determination against an occupying army. That's the idea, and Russia did invade. But all this get the sinister plans of the United States within that get to be hidden, and that's what I believe is happening here. Is that I think the people who might think that this is helping the cause of LGBTQ, they're being used as proxies for a ruling class revolution, fourth industrial revolution. And a major feature of that is going to be the digital revolution and the implementation of AI and the notion of what it is to be human, to become more flexible, and that is a feature of it. That is an ideological feature of it that has caused people to, in the name of fearing the transhumanist agenda, to also reject people who identify as transgender and say that nah. And I don't agree with them on that part. Like I do think that is a category of people, and I do think they're an oppressed group, and I do think they have every right to be recognized for that. What does it mean in terms of sports? What does it mean in terms of actually helping children make medical decisions without consent of their parents? No, there I don't go as far. There I think some of the entry of transgender people into sports, into women's sports, is hurtful to the cause of women being able to play sports. Do I think that's the most important thing in the world? No, but I do think that. I think the more important thing, where I've agreed with people who question what's going on with transgender movement, is the notion of schools not telling parents about gender identity changes, and then the medicalization of it. Like that, doing that with young people seems wrong to me. But again, there's a lot of things that are going wrong. So the thing that you're saying about the AI, and using that for their beds, I hadn't heard about that, but it does bring me back to Argentina versus Morocco, which you had brought up. Is it Argentina versus Morocco, right? And I know this is a feature in soccer that's been going on for quite some time, but it is something that made me think. So what happened was, last minute goal by Argentina to tie the game. They were down 2-1, and they had a last minute goal to tie it. And there celebration. Of course, they still had to check the thing, whether it had been offsides and things like that. And then I guess some audience member threw, what did they throw? It was like things that make it.
They started throwing a bunch of stuff into the field.
Okay.
It wasn't just one. It was like a number of people to the point that they had to stop the game.
But it made like explosions, like popping sounds, like it was like fireworks.
I don't know about that part, but
Okay.
they just stopped because I saw the images of like not just one thing happening, just like a bunch of stuff started coming down, raining,
Yeah.
and the police had to come in too.
So what do? They stop the game, but they still have to check to whether this was a legal goal because it was offside. So what do? They take out their fucking computer, and it scans the person, and you can see that the guy, or at least from what the computer is saying, that the guy's foot is like a half beyond the knee of the defender, which they are calling that offsides. And now look, I know you've been watching World Cup. This stuff is going on now. Like they're doing this. But to me, this is absurd. To me, the idea that we're going to just allow computers to decide these things for us. Offsides is about the idea that somebody stands behind the defender collecting a pass and they just shoot it in. They say, no, you can't do that. Now they're turning it into this thing which is like measured in centimeters, you know? And I think it's ridiculous. I think to the notion that that's offsides, like, is an inversion of what that rule is. And now the fact that they then restarted the game, all the crowd has been gone away, and 2 hours later, on the basis of what the computer told us is true, so everyone stay here, we're going to play this game. That to me, that was the meaningful event of that, is once again, is the law of the digital information, the law that is where truth is to be found. And this is not the first game that's played that way soccer-wise. They did it for the World Cup. I'm pretty sure the entire World Cup and things. But this is what dawned on me when I saw this. And so I'm curious, because you brought it up, and I'm curious what you make of it.
It's a great point what you're bringing up, and I'm still gonna go deeper because there's a lot of context for this as to what happened. But first, let me address the technology aspect. I had never thought about it that way. I just knew something bothered me. I don't like technology in sports. Like it's a game, but I get that there is a lot of financial interest in deciding, and they make it about fairness. But in fact, I think it's the opposite. I think because if you notice that image that they show you, they don't show you the actual live image. They take a digitally produced image of the players. So they remove the actual video from the game and they just give you what the computer is telling you. And so you don't get to see the actual play, like replay, because they used to just draw a line and show you people that. And so there's a lot of people who are cynics about soccer in general, depending on what games you watch and like how the referees decide games and influence outcomes. And so I think there is something to that argument, because they are removing the actual image. Why do you have to remove the actual image of the game? And again, put a cartoon depiction of real humans, right? In order supposedly to get it right, they don't. And I actually have questions about the play. But let me give also some context. So this became a massive scandal because it was one of the first, like, they started playing before the actual ceremony because the soccer tournaments take a long time. You have the rest days in between, so they had to start earlier. And so one of the first events is mired in chaos, right? Because they had to stop it because people started going berserk. They started throwing shit on the field. But let me also contextualize why. So Argentina recently played the final of Copa America, which is like the World Cup for the continent. That's a separate tournament from the Olympics. And the Olympic team is also not the full Olympic squad. They have a lot of youngsters with some like members of the main team. But the main team of Argentina won the Copa America. They are also the champions from 2022, the World Cup champions from Qatar. And so they are doing very well. Argentina is known for being very passionate about soccer, and so they talk a lot of shit. Like their fans, they come with chants. They actually are very colorful in their chants. A lot of countries in the world mimic Argentinians in the way they chant, like the fans themselves. They take their shirts off. They call your mother off. They call, they say all kinds of shit, smack talk. And so Argentina beat France in the World Cup in 2022. And so France was sore about it. In Argentinians, because they are colorful, they made a chant where they started talking shit about the French players. How in their citizenship it says that they're from France, but they're really from Angola. They're saying on the chant, right? And so this was a chant that was chanted 2 years ago. It didn't get so much attention. I don't remember it getting so much attention. But Argentina, after they won Copa America, they started chanting this shit again. Kind of like throwing a message to France, even though they weren't playing in the same tournament. And so now they are being sanctioned as racist because they're talking shit. Because Mbappe, which is one of the top players of France, his parents are from Cameroon and Nigeria, something like that, and he was born in France. But it's funny because when France won the World Cup in 2018?
18, yeah.
That was a feature that was being highlighted, that the French national team wouldn't not have won the World Cup if it wasn't for immigrants. Because there are some people that have nationalized as French players who are from Africa. Most of the players are from Africa, from Algeria, from Nigeria, Cameroon, a lot of the countries in the Sahel where France has dominated as a colonial power. And so, again, this chant now is being reanalyzed in a racist frame. And again, in a world where FIFA and these world organizations are more sanctioning people for being racist or being sexist according to their rules, right? And it's very arbitrary too. And it also lacks the cultural context, because if they understood, I don't see it as racist. I see it as smack talk, which has some truth to it, because the French national team wouldn't be shit without the immigrants. They were born there, but without the black African, not just black, because they also have Algerian, players, they wouldn't be shit. The French national team, like, go look at their roster and where their roots are from. And so again, and so going back to the Olympics, there is a lot of anger. A lot of the Moroccan players were born in France, and they are playing for Morocco. So it's the vice versa. So this shit happens all the time, where they trade players. Nationalities are not respected as they used to be. People are born in many places of the world, and then they get to choose which nation they represent, right? And so the Moroccan players and their families have dual, interests here, right? They live in France, and they also, probably supports the French, cause, because it's contagious. When you're watching sports and there is a celebration, how can you not root for, when you're bonding with people over the joy of some magical thing to celebrate?
And mind you, going back to our last episode, Scramble for Africa, Morocco has been a long-term French colony.
Yeah. So it's not, so this is normal, right? That Moroccans, come, and go between those countries. And so this is why, again, Argentina was, I feel got that rage against them, because they were scoring, in the last minute. They're also on your face. They're passionate. But prior to that Olympic event, they were being classified as racist. And because they also throw more wrench in the gears of these bullshit of nationalities, right? Most of the Argentinian players come from Italian roots. And so that's why it's so, at the end of the day, it's ridiculous that these institutions want to regulate, what proper values, about racism and all this shit is, because it ultimately has a more nefarious intent. They get to sanction and manipulate outcomes, because guess what? There's a lot of betting and money that go into these games too. Like, if Morocco beats Argentina, that's a massive win for whoever, bet on Morocco. In Morocco, again, it's probably more favored in France because there is a lot of Moroccan people in France than Argentina who has to travel across the world, right, to go watch their team.
Right.
And so that's the context of that. And again, it also brings this liberal or from like these values from above, right, like into play. And after the 2 hours, right, Argentina gets sanctioned and punished, who are probably one of the favorites to win the tournament. And so that's that part that that I thought it's a mess because the purity of competition, right, that they claim to be, is actually meddled by hints from above.
Yeah.
The outcome is
and with some very dubious technology that is inserted itself here, that people now look at like as if it's better than a ref, better than an image, that it is reality. Like this is the truth telling is coming from this cartoon. I guess I thought I had never dawned on me that we're always seeing these little cartoon pictures that aren't really the image. Maybe they have a relationship to the image, but they're not the image itself. It's a recreation. It's a computer recreation.
So your eyes are not seeing, you're not making your own decision. You just have to trust what they're telling you.
Right. And if a person's tip of their foot based on this cartoon goes beyond it when they say that the ball had not yet been kicked or something, well, you're offsides. It's an absurdity.
It is, and it's such a, that's what I said, it's a shit show because this is one of the first events, and it starts with kicking all the fans out of the building, bringing the players back 2 hours later to play 3 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
And to also tell them, oh, we disallowed that last goal that you scored 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
After we brought all the cops in here.
Yeah.
On that note, I also I wonder because on the issue of security and technology, did you know that also? I didn't know this, that there's like 40 different foreign police agencies involved in the security of Paris.
Yeah, I have some numbers here that I got from David Zirin article. He basically said the games have given rise to the largest military presence in the city since World War II, with around 10,000 soldiers centralized in a military camp in close proximity to the Paris Olympic venues. 45,000 police patrol the city, and 20,000 private security guards. And that's outside of the Olympic Games law, which greenlighted algorithmic video surveillance.
Sounds like preparations for war.
Well, it is, and it's a preparation for, like, I do think in this regard, these signifiers, these symbolic signifiers from the Paris Olympics, signify a ruling class which is prepared to make war on the working class, and is telling you so, and is going to use all sorts of insults and all ways of mockery, and even under the guise of diversity and inclusion, to I think enshrine and create a symbol of the change they plan to bring. So I'm kind of thinking that this revolutionary stuff is not accidental, and the idea that it's going to be bloody, their revolution, is telling us something. And the symbol of the pale horse coming in, which is a symbol of, as I understand it, the moment of Armageddon, when the 4 horsemen begin to come in, and it is said that 1/4 the population must prepare to get expunged. It's like, so in 2012, the Olympic ceremony in London was medical beds with syringes and shit. So.
I mean, I struggle, again, going back to this symbolism thing. I mean, it's obviously deliberate, and I mean, because it also riles up the people who are reactive, right, to what they're showing us. And so I think it's divisive in 2 ways.
Right, but they're reacting. they're reacting to the director, they're reacting to the LGBTQ community. The capitalists can sit back and be like, they get to launch, they throw the bomb into the crowd, and they get to watch everyone fight.
Exactly. That's how I read it, because like, so it's more of a paralyzing thing for the people who would actually have a stake in the possibility, right, of actually effecting change that would be potentially better for everyone, for the masses, right. And so, uh, because they that's what I'll say about that one.
Yeah. And just one last thing, like, I mean, and any Western politician can use this, but if you think of Macron, as we talked about in the election, who is going to use the left wing and the center to bludgeon the right, the so-called right, and maintain power, you can see a symbol of how he's going to do it here, which is to use language that would seem to that Parisianers would say, yeah, this is us, and say, yeah, if this is us, then you're with me, you're with Macron, because I'm going to take out the people who are not for that kind of inclusivity. These are the people who think that the Last Supper, is like they're trying to bring a Christian theological control, here or something like that. They're trying to remeld church and state to like crush Western democracies. So, or some version of that, the mystic religious backwardness of people on the right.
Something else that also is very curious to me and that is related is so they said some stuff, they alluded to revolution, right? Like the French history, but there's also a bunch of things they don't say, they chose not to say, right? Like the complicated and really brutal history of France as a colonial power, right?
Right.
Because again, we just spoke about the national team, and there's no accident that most players are from certain parts of Africa. Because what reminded me of this in a cynical way is like, where they're choosing to do the surfing event in Tahiti. It's like 10-15,000 miles away from Paris, which is a colony of France, but which is about that complicated history of obliterating uh, other lands and exploiting them. I saw a comment that I think is spot on that they were saying something along the lines of Haitians should get whatever the fuck they want while they're in Paris.
Free tickets to the Olympics.
But yeah, because former colony, the golden goose of France for a while.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to bring up the other shit that happened during the ceremony. Like, and I don't know if it's symbolism too, but the Olympic flag, did you hear that it was upside down too?
No.
That when during the ceremony, it was upside down. And they also, and again, I don't know. I don't think these things are accident necessarily. Like they also introduced the South Koreans as the Democratic Republic of Korea, which is actually North Korea. During the introduction of the teams, they introduced him, and there was another thing that they also mishandled during a basketball match game. They for when South Sudan, which is a new country, right, like was playing against Puerto Rico, they were playing the national anthem of Sudan, which is where they broke off from, and people were booing them and saying shit, and so they've been apologizing left and right, but at the end of the day, it's just fucking statements. And again, this is an event that it's supposed to have a lot of fucking preparation leading up to it, and these things that are very obvious, like.
Yeah, and I'm going to be clear. Like sometimes people might hear this kind of conversation and think that you and I would be thinking people shouldn't be watching the Olympics, something like that. If somebody told me they're watching the Olympics, I don't think like, oh, that's a bad thing or a good thing. All I can say is, don't think that the Olympics is in any way putting aside anything that's going on in the world. all the problems and the conflicts and the lies and the hypocrisy and the contradictions that exist in the world are literally on display at the Olympics. And apparently the ruling class, and I do get a sense the ruling class uses it as a party to reveal their plans and power. And so, you know, there's the Olympics.
Yeah, I that hypocrisy, right, is not new. That's not that is the goal, I think, of the Olympics and highlighting this myth of the nation, right? And the inconsistencies are, well, I guess this is what I'll say, that when they create this mythology of the nation, they're very good at highlighting certain things and omitting many things, right? Like, for example, something that's of a major historical event, when Jesse Owens went to the 1936 Berlin Olympics, right? And he won four gold medals in front of Hitler, right? The highest of evil, the most racist, the worst of humanity. Never mind that when he came home, he came to the Jim Crow, US. He came back and he couldn't make a living, and he ended up racing horses to sustain himself. That was, the gift to Jesse Owens, right? Like, who is upheld as this historical figure, who did something, incredible in that period. But again, like, we're not told that story, or we're not told, we're also John Carlos and Tim Smith. I don't know.
The guys who do the hand,
yeah. They were kicked out of the fucking Olympics. I didn't know that until I started looking at this. They were kicked out of the fucking Olympics, after they won medals, because they weren't even, they themselves are saying they weren't even saying black power. They were talking about human rights, in we celebrate these events as acts of defiance, but again, it's just fucking symbolism,
right?
That is managed by the people who tell us a narrative, a story, and that's what I see the Olympics as being the main goal, is to manage a narrative, right? Because forget race, just in general, the Olympians are some of the most exploited fucking workers in the world, because most of them don't get paid a lot of money. They have to put their own bills, and even when they win, like, only the few that are really make it famous have, they get a lot of money, they get a sponsorships and things like that. When most of them get back to the hustle, the struggle to make it to the Olympics, so on your note of watching the Olympics, I do tend to like. I am inspired by these feats of individual effort. I am. I don't care so much about the nationality, but there is, high drama, right? It's something that we like. There is something about the human spirit, but take away the fucking cloak of nationalities and all that shit, and that's how I appreciate this. I do watch it because I know it's a massive capitalist event telling me bullshit. It's hard to sort through that, but that's how I take it. And like, I'm not telling people not to watch it. It's admirable what people do. Like, how much training it takes to fucking fight another person, right? Like, you've done jujitsu, and to get to that level, it's it's something to be appreciated.
Yeah, and the reason Tommy Smith, and what was the name of that other person?
Giancarlo,
were kicked out was because they dared to bring politics in the Olympics. It's like, dude, y'all aren't even letting Russia and Belarus even do this. So what is that? And secondly, you're all just having this massive orgy celebrating each other's states. You want each country to pray to their flag. Each country person. To bend down to the flag. Like, what is that other than politics? So it's an absurdity.
And also, again, you brought up Russia. There was banned because of their invasion of Ukraine this time around, right? And never mind Israel, right? Like that other, they actually were received with like a lot of security, because whatever. But oh yes, so again, Russia was sanctioned because of their invasion of Ukraine, but even the Olympics before in 2018, they were banned for another reason because they're the biggest cheaters, right? Like supposedly they dope their people. They have a doping program.
Right.
And they're the only people who, again, they're the savages, and I think it keeps feeding into that narrative. And I do think these are, like you said, they're not separate from the political processes going worldwide, because it keeps advancing that narrative, right? Like that they're not civilized. They are. They'll do whatever they have to. And never mind all the fucking cheating scandals that the Americans have been, caught up in, or all the instances of abuse, by like the fucking coach of the gymnastics team.
Gymnastics, yeah.
And so there is, they want to portray these angles of purity and better values, which is just stupid and cynical.
Yeah. Yeah, like as if they are beyond the pale of the world community. We will do our games, you are outside. So it's not going to work ultimately, but it's just like you said, very cynical, very hypocritical. And on that commercial note for the Paris Olympics, I guess we'll end our episode. Well, thanks, Kenny. This was actually fun. It was good to talk to you about this. So that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes, wherever you found this episode, or on our blog, what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find past episodes of this podcast there and connect with us. I remind people, if you like anything you've heard here, please subscribe, rate, or review, or turn on your notifications to any of our other platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Bitchute, Odysee, Rumble, YouTube, or Telegram. And if you'd like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, please contact us through our blog. And so for Andy and for Kenny, wishing Alex a good return next week, and hopefully Eduardo. That's it for What's Left, and we'll see you next week.